Professor? Professor?
Okay, everybody can hear me well? Just say yes.
Yes.
All right. Hope things went okay for the midterm. If not, if you couldn't make it for some reason, do not worry. Its weight is transferred to the final. Just have to study more for the final to make sure you have a good grade. And yeah, we're going to grade the midterm as quickly as possible. A question before we start?
No.
No. All right. So let's go ahead and start the class. So today we finish the chapter on government intervention and market efficiency. And then, yeah, if we get some time, we can start discussing trade somehow. So let me share my screen. Okay, so here we were last time. And so we were talking about different types of goods. So just to remind you where we were. So we were discussing all the types of market failures that we could encounter. So we have discussed a bit one type, which is imperfect competition, in which case one agent, normally one firm, but it could be one buyer as well. So so any market agent has an overwhelming weight on the market. They can basically try manipulating the price to their advantage, and this leads to a situation that is not as efficient as before. However, that's not the worst case. So yeah, many other situations may lead to markets not functioning well. So that's not saying that, oh, we should just get some other system. Markets work fine most of the time, but it's good to know when they fail. So and we can in that way we can address address the failures and try to improve the situation. So one was externalities. So when there is some economic activity with some economic transaction between a buyer and a seller, but they do not care about some indirect effect that's being felt by a third party, either positive or negative. And if it's, for instance, a negative externality, then of course it means that there's too much of the economic activity if it's not taken into account. So for instance, if there is electricity produced using coal, then so the person producing the electricity and buying the electricity, they're fine doing their own trade, but they don't realize that, or maybe they realize and they don't care, that it creates CO2, which creates global warming and has adverse impacts on all of us. So that's the effect of externalities, and some may be easy to address, some may be much more difficult. So probably global warming is perhaps the challenge of our time to try and address it. Is yeah, it has all the ingredients of being a very difficult problem to disentangle, because it's just the impact of global warming are so widespread. Yeah, so then we discussed a bit what this means in terms of analysis of supply and demand. And here we were last time. So we were discussing public goods. So public goods, you could think about them as some kind of externality, in the sense that if, for instance, I produce a park, then so if for myself, for instance, or for somebody who wants to buy it, then there are only two people in this this market interaction. But of course, it's a public good, it's a park, so everybody could use it. So it looks like a positive externality. But we analyze it in its own way. So we have different ways of looking at goods, classifying them to understand how to manage every type of public goods. So we have two criteria for that. One is rivalry, and the other is excludability. So rival good, just to remind you what this is, it's a good that, if consumed, become unavailable for other people. So it's like food, or like if I buy a car and I don't share it, then it's my car and nobody can use it. So it's the toothpaste. It's any kind of good that we think intuitively when we think about goods. But of course, non-rival goods are goods like for instance, sunlight, or knowledge could be one. So if I use some idea, then this same idea can be used by everybody else. And excludability is the ability to prevent people who didn't pay for a good to use it. And it turns out that this matters a lot for markets to work properly, simply because it's if I'm able to access a good without paying for it, then I'm not going to pay for it. That's simple as that. Well, I mean, I should if I care about it and I'm a good citizen. But if we assume that people are just selfish and they want to use as many things as they can without paying for it, then this becomes a problem, because then people would like to produce these non-excludable good but cannot be paid for them, then they're just not going to produce them. So a good example would be music. So it used to be that you could produce a disc and only people who paid money to buy the disc could listen to the song. Now songs are so easily distributed on the internet that it makes things more complicated. So artists cannot rely just on making a disc and making money out of selling this disc. They have to do all sorts of other things on the side, like touring, like selling products or other things, to get paid somehow. Otherwise, they just the music industry is just going to not exist anymore. All right, and then using these two criteria, we can classify goods into 4 categories. So private goods are rivalrous and excludable. So they are the normal goods that we think about. Club goods are excludable yeah, and non-rival up to a point. So these don't create so much problem. And then common property resources are non-excludable and rivalrous, and the pure public good are non-rivalrous and non-excludable. So here it doesn't look like much. So I'm just going to go to the next slide so it becomes clearer. So these are the private goods, so the goods that we think about. So like food, like a seat on an airplane, simply because if somebody uses the seat, then I can't use it anymore. An hour of legal advice, because it's my time as a lawyer, for instance. Club goods are goods that can be shared, but that for which it's easy to prevent people from accessing them. So roads, roads, I would say it's with toll booths. Is it how you write it? Toll booths? I'm not sure. Yeah, let's write it this way. Maybe I'm making a stupid error. So roads for which you just ask people, oh, pay for the road if you're using it. If it's a public road with no special access to it, then everybody can use it. Yeah, same thing with bridges. So for which, yeah, with toll booths. Cable TV, satellite TV, as long as people don't pirate them. So it turns out that club goods are not so, and we see it's not rivalrous up to capacity. Of course, if the art gallery is completely full of people, then it becomes rivalrous because an extra person cannot enter. But as long as we're under capacity, it's fine. And it turns out that this is not very problematic. For efficiency. So as long as you're able to make people pay for it, then all you need is to gather enough users to finance, say it's a tennis club. So instead of buying one game from somebody, so you just buy access to the club. And if you have a large enough number of people to finance the tennis club, then it works as any other private good. So these two are not problematic. The real problem is here. Because here people are just going to overexploit and underproduce. So one big problem here is common property resources, so that are rivalrous and non-excludable. So it's especially all the natural resources. So this becomes extremely difficult to maintain. And there's a famous article by Kenneth Harding called The Tragedy of the Common. So yeah, just in which he discusses he discusses the problem of access to a common resource. And what happens is, so for instance, if people live around the field in which everybody can just send so they're farmers or they raise cattle and they can bring their cattle to the field. Well, what happens if I don't care that my cattle eat the grass that could be eaten by everybody else's cattle, then I'm just going to bring all my cattle there and they're all going to graze. And there's going to be overgrazing, so overexploitation. And so that's here the same case with fisheries, rivers and streams. So if you start fishing and you don't care about the fact that the resource is shared with other countries or other users of the lake, then you deplete the resource simply, and you don't care about the adverse impact on the other wildlife, clean air. Yeah. So what are the solutions to this? So let me go here. So solution. Or not solution, but results. Yeah, first of all, the price goes up. Result from overexploitation. The price should go up, I would say. But if people don't pay for it, then it's not like there's a price per se, but the price in reality should go up because there's a rarity. So in case of fisheries, for instance, so if some fish like tuna becomes unavailable in the sea because everybody has fished it, then what happens is the price skyrockets. And now bluefin tuna is some of the last bluefin tunas are being sold at outrageously high prices in Japan because they're becoming very rare. Yeah, and so what happens is eventually we stop exploiting it. Yeah, so like passenger pigeon, like cod. So these are all, so these are completely extinct. There was a moratorium in, I don't remember the date, but in Canada. And when there is enough market for it, so for instance, fish, so the fish resources in the sea have been depleted by the big fish resources. So some scientists have realized that maybe up to 80% of the stock of big fish that we once used a lot in the sea have all been depleted. So the result is when we can, we just replace the common resource by private exploitation, by private production. So I'm going to give you so just for fun. So can somebody guess how on the shelves, if you go to buy fish, what percentage of the fish you're going to buy comes from natural sources, and what percentage comes from fish farming? So it's not, you're not going to fail your class if you don't have the right number. I'm just curious, what's your impression?
Most fish we see at the supermarket is from a fish farm, and free range fish are usually expensive, from what I know.
Yeah, that's a good answer. But it's a very recent phenomenon. So let me show you how recent it is. So this is from a very nice website. It's addictive. You should go there once in a while when you have time, just to look at all the incredibly good data they have. And this is data about seafood production. And look at this. So this is in the 60s, we were still exploiting. So fish farming was absolutely non-existent. But here, what did we invent? We invented trawlers here, which are fish with huge nets that basically catch everything that they can. And that's super efficient, but it just lasts for a while. And as you can see, the fish the captures were rising and rising and rising, but it slowly stopped rising. And here it's been the same since the 1990s. So why? Well, because our technology for catching fish is super good, but the sea is becoming emptier and emptier, and we have to go to less desirable fishes like sardines, for instance. But at the same moment that we are depleting the sea, then look at what's happening to aquaculture, skyrocketing. And so 2013 was the first year in which more fish were privately produced than captured in the sea. And this is, there's no turning point. There is no turning back. This is never going to increase again because the seas are emptying more and more, but aquaculture is just skyrocketing. So so fishing was the last domain in which we still use natural resources. So for farming, we don't go out and just pick a random wild plants. We just farm them. And the same thing for raising cattle. So we do that domestically. But fishing was the last big food production in which we use nature. Now that's not the case anymore. Yeah. So I'm just going to leave this in the corner there. So yeah, these things are huge problems. So and this is for resources like fishes, clean air. Well, we haven't figured out how to. Well, we just had a last COP 20. I don't know how many, and yeah, it's every time the same. So countries talk like they are going to do something, but in the back of their head, if you're able to not promise anything concrete, then it's a great victory for your country. Then it's so yeah, cleaner. It's something that we stop over exploiting. And now, so that's the thing. Now, what we can say is pure public good. Are goods which are non-excludable and non-rivalrous. So anybody can use them, and it doesn't prevent anybody else from using them. What kind of what's this kind? So public information. So like research, art, like songs, or public protection, like yeah, police, army. So if the street is safe from thieves and from invading armies, then it's safe for me, but it's also safe for my neighbor. Radio signals. For those who don't know what radio signals are, they're old technology that we used to listen to the radio. Now everything is online with podcasts, but yeah. So these are the purest form of public goods. What's the problem with this? It's not overexploitation, because it doesn't matter if we overexploit, because exploiting doesn't prevent other people from using it, but it's underproduction. So it's the same problem for any non-excludable goods. So if people can use them without paying for them, then they want to have them without paying for them. So if they don't pay for them, then it's not worth it for anybody to start producing them. So like research or art, there must be some way to finance it. Otherwise, it's not going to be produced. Yeah. All right. So questions about these? No? All right. Yeah. So what's the problem with non-excludable good? It's what we call the free rider problem. So free rider. Use the good without paying for it. So back in the days, a free rider would be somebody who hop in a boat or a train, for instance, and hide, so they don't have to pay for the trip, but they still take the trip. But that's, of course, something that's true for any kind of stealing. Yeah, so what's the solution for the free rider problem? Well, it's, of course, that public good be produced by the government, but people don't like paying taxes. But your taxes pay for all these public goods that you get to use. So the people who don't like paying taxes, what they usually say is, "Oh, it's wasted anyways." Yeah, so some of it may be wasteful, as we're going to see later. but there's an extension from saying that some of it is wasted to all of it is wasted. And the proof, as actually in Canada, is yeah, we have roads. They're bumpy and they're not perfectly well maintained, but still they're there. And we have public education, and we have free healthcare. All of these things are imperfect, but they still exist. So it means that at some point, the money from taxes still is making its way into these services. Yeah, so this is. So when we say roads, where we say public roads that can be accessed by anybody, and when we say roads as club goods, then we say private roads or roads that for which we have to pay a toll. Optimal provision of public good. So now, how should we produce public goods? So this graph is a bit technical, so I'm going to explain it a bit to you before. So usually when we want to aggregate things, we did it by saying, oh, here's the thing. So we have many people who buy a good and many people who produce the good. And how we do things is we look at individual demand. So demand from person 1, and then demand from person 2 and from person 3. And to get the total demand of the market, we would add up and horizontally all the demands of everybody. And same thing for supplies. So we would say from 1 supplies, from 2 supplies, from 3 supplies, and we would all aggregate them horizontally this way. And now for public goods, it's the reverse for the demand. Why is it the reverse? Well, for 2 reasons. First of all, it's non-rival. So it means that if I consume it, then it doesn't prevent anybody from consuming it. So in a sense, if I consume this quantity Q star, so it's my consumption, but it's also, if it's, for instance, going to the museum, then the museum is there. And I consume this quantity of museum, but the other person consumes the same quantity of museum, and the third person consumes the same. So we don't have to add up all these individual consumption as if they were different. They're all the same consumption. So we don't add up Qs like this. 1 Q star for 1 person is the same Q star for everybody. Second of all, they're non-rival. So the benefit 1 person gets from it is added to the benefit that the other person gets from it. If it were normal goods like food, then once I eat it, then it's gone, it's finished. But here I go to the museum, I get some benefit, and the next person goes to the museum and gets the benefit too. So here we're not going to add the marginal benefits this way, but we're going to add them this way. So it means that in the decision of optimal production, of optimal supply of public good, what would be the optimum? It would be the place where the marginal cost of producing it. So imagine it's building a museum. This is a large museum, a small museum. It has to be equal not to the marginal benefit of a single person, but the sum of the marginal benefits of everybody. So what you would have to do is say, okay, this is the marginal benefit of person 1 or person A. This is the marginal benefit of person B. And what I have to do is I add this to this, and you see that this distance there plus this distance there equals this whole distance there. So then this darker blue line is the sum of the benefits of A and marginal benefits of A and B. And this is, so this is the optimum. Yeah. And so this is, so there's a technical term for this. So private good. Then we see that marginal benefit equals marginal cost. And here we, for public good, we say that the sum of marginal benefits. So I'm going to say I for everybody has to be equal to marginal cost. And this is called so the first person to have described this is Paul Samuelson. So it's called the Samuelson condition for public goods. So we're not going to go into detail into how it's done, but this is how you have to see it. So you add up together under vertically all the individual marginal benefits, and this sum of marginal benefits has to be equal to the marginal cost at the optimum. So Q star here. So to describe what is the optimal production of public good. Is that clear?
Yes.
All right, asymmetric information. This is a completely different story. So yeah. So in the case of public goods, we don't say that there is especially large problems with information, but here we go into some other potentially very serious problem. So what's going on there? Well, usually we assume that there is perfect information that's available in the market. So this is how markets are able to work well. So for instance, as a consumer, you assume that I'm able to access instantly the price of, so if I want to buy chicken, then I can instantly know what the price of chicken is in every store in Canada. And there's no transaction cost, no traveling costs. So if I could transport myself instantly to the store in which the chicken is cheapest and buy it there. And there's also, so that's one thing, there's perfect availability of information on prices. And there is perfect information about what sort of chicken it is, how it's made. We'll put in potentially. So yeah, so we so private markets. Perfect and freely available information on all prices and goods and good characteristics. So what's wrong with this lack of information? Well, first of all, of course, if I can't, if it costs me to access information, then it's going to make things more complicated for me to go and buy the cheapest thing. But also the more problematic case is asymmetric information. So asymmetric information is when one party to the transaction knows more than the other party. And in that case, so yeah, so and this creates a lot of problems. So one that has described of the first economists that have described this is Akerlof. And the paper is Markets for Lemons. Or Market for Lemons. Okay, I don't remember the title exactly. And here's the story of the market for lemons. So lemons are old cars, used cars. So what's the problem here? So imagine that I'm a used car salesman. I know if my used car is completely almost destroyed, or I know if it's a good old car that could be driven for 10,000 more kilometers, for instance. So I know that because I'm a mechanic, I inspect the car, I know everything about it. But the person who's coming and wants to buy the car, they cannot know for sure. They just have to trust me that I'm not lying to them. So what happens? Well, imagine I'm a buyer and I want to buy a car, and I think that in the wild there might be maybe 50% of the used cars that are good, and good used cars used to be called cherries, and 50% of the used car that are bad, that are lemons. So so if somebody offers me a car and I cannot know for sure which car it is, so that person is going to say it's a very good car, it's a cherry car, but I cannot say for sure. So I'm going to say, well, sorry, but I'm not going to pay for the price of a good used car because maybe it's trash. So I want a discount. So what happens? Well, if I'm a seller and I wanted to sell a good old car that I spend some times to try and fix, then it's so it's not worth it for me to sell this good old car at a discount price, because I'm going to lose money on my sales. Whereas if I sell a super bad old car that I didn't spend any money buying back or trying to fix, then I'm going to make a super good profit, because I'm going to rip off my buyer. So what happens? Well, no seller is going to sell good cherry cars, because it's not worth it. Nobody's going to want to buy them. But all the sellers are going to want to buy bad cars. And eventually the market for cherries is going to disappear. And all we're left is lemons. All we're left with is bad cars. So this is a phenomenon with used cars, but it can be said for many different sort of things. So for instance, food. If you want to sell a good organic beef, or bad quality mass produced with tons of medication beef, but as a customer you can see that you cannot see the difference, and it's not written on the package. So what's going to happen? Well, I want to sell my good quality beef at say $20 or $40, but nobody's going to want to buy that because they cannot be sure that it's quality beef. So this supply is going to dry out. So as you see, so in the case of market power, there's some, the price is a bit too high and the quantity exchange is a bit too low, but it's not all that bad. Here, the whole market for used car, for a good used car just disappears. So it's really, really, really bad. So it's, yeah, it's really problematic. Fortunately, there are solutions to this. So for instance, in case of cars, for instance, what is the solution for what is the solution for information asymmetry in car markets?
Maybe like provide like a sheet with the information of like how the car is. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So provide information, but so it's sort of saying there's no more information asymmetry. So that can be verified. So that's so yeah, in case of meats, for instance. So this is like yeah, organic food labeling. So it has to be official. If anybody can write anything on their labeling, then it doesn't matter. So everybody's going to lie all the time. But there's another solution. No idea?
No.
It's not just for cars, for many sort of goods that you buy and you want to make sure that it's good quality. It's not going to break.
Maybe a good marketing.
Marketing? Not sure. The thing is, marketing, you cannot always say anything.
Offer a warranty?
Yes, good. Yeah, so the seller commits to paying for repairs if necessary. So what's going on with more warranties? Well, it's not exactly the act of offering the service of fixing your car. There's especially the information that's going through the warranty. What I'm saying, if I'm selling you a car with warranty, is it's a cherry, it's a good car, because if it does break down, then it's going to cost me a lot of money. So by selling you this car with warranty, I know that you know that I'm not going to sell a bad car that's going to break down after 2 days, because it's going to cost me a fortune to try and fix it. So there's a lot of information that's going on in warranties. So it's really a way of committing yourself as a seller. Yeah, so there are mechanisms by which it's possible to fix information asymmetry. Yeah, other examples. Maybe I've already talked about this. So insurance market. So yeah, patients know more about their habits, but physician. How do I write physician? Doctors no more about treatment. So that's the problem with insurance. And one yeah, so this is for health insurance, for instance. One case too is again, so some people may take a lot of risk, some people may take little risk. So insurers, they would like to know who is whom, because if I'm going to insure everybody the same, then the people who always make accidents with their car, I'm going to only pay for these, and it's going to cost a lot of money to people who don't commit accidents with their car. So again, there's a problem of the fact that I know if I'm somebody who likes to take risk and drive fast, but the insurer doesn't exactly know. So what's the solution for the insurer? So try to gather as much information as possible on their clients. So and sometimes there's discrimination. So if you're a young driver and if you drive a Corvette and if it's red, then be sure that your insurer is going to say, okay, I think for you, let's go with this sort of contract, especially for a young 17-year-old men who drive Corvettes with red paint on them, then that I'm going to have the perfect contract for you, which is going to be quite expensive because they know that maybe you're going to have more accidents than the other people. So that's it. It would seem unfair. Why would I have to pay more? Well, you pay more because statistically you have more accidents than the other people. Other solution. Deductibles. Why deductibles? Well, deductibles allow insurance firms to say, okay, if you are somebody who has a low risk, then take this contract with a high deductible, meaning that if you have an accident, you pay a big chunk of the repairs yourself. But if you're a good risk, then you know that the likelihood of accident is very low. So you won't have to pay for that. Whereas if you are a bad risk, meaning if you have a lot of accidents, then you know that if you take deductibles, it's going to cost you like crazy to pay all of these. So rather, you're going to go for a contract with no deductibles. So this was done work by Rothschild, Stiglitz. Worked on this. Yeah. So moral hazard, what is this? So this is all adverse selection. So moral hazard is the fact that once I do whatever, once I have an insurance, then I don't have a good incentive to not have an accident because I'm not the one who's going to pay for it. So again, this creates problems. So yeah, all of these things are, so once you understand the information problems, then you understand a lot of different aspects of all the contracts that are going on in the world that all come to everybody trying to not get ripped off by the people who have more information than they do. All right, so that's yeah, probably more than we needed. Yeah, so this is what we've seen previously. So imperfect completion, externalities, common property resources and public goods, and asymmetric information. So these are the four main reasons why markets do not work properly. And now we're just going to discuss how the state is going to be able to address these things. Well, first of all, so this is yeah, 4 reasons. Why market forming markets are not always efficient. But we're going to just discuss a bit why efficiency is not the only criterion for saying is it for saying that markets are working as we would like them to work. So broader social goals. So even in the sense of market failure, so even if markets worked efficiently, the government may choose to intervene in markets to achieve other goals. One is income distribution. So yeah, tax and transfer system redistributes income as many policies such as employment insurance and child benefits. And sometimes we hear that policies designed to redistribute income reduce economic efficiency. So why? Somebody has an idea why? No, no idea.
No.
Why? Example. If income tax to redistribute to poor people, then the tax discourages work. So if I'm being taxed, let's just say a very large amount, so 80% of my income is taxed, then do I like working? Well, at some point I'm going to think, why do I work? I'm just going to not work and then just receive free money from the government. So you see that as a government, if you want to alleviate poverty, you have to keep in mind that you shouldn't tax people too much. Otherwise, they might just stop working. So this is, yeah, if in a purely communistic system, for instance, So people work for the state, they don't work for themselves, and then the states pay everybody as much as they need or they deem they need. But then the problem is incentives. So yeah, but we should not exaggerate this. So if some economists say, oh yeah, but we should never redistribute income because it's bad for efficiency. So it's up to a point, yes, but up to marginal tax rates, which we have in Canada, for instance, it's not all that bad. So why? First, the high income and rich people like working, or yeah, work regard, yeah, work, so yeah, supply of labor is is quite inelastic. So up to tax marginal tax rate. So for instance, in wartime in the US, the marginal tax rate was very, very high, but still people worked all the same. So now it's become quite lower, and yeah, but it's not like, so all the estimates we have. So Emmanuel Saez has done a lot of work on that, and yeah, so it really looks like, so, yeah, it's not like there's going to be a huge boost to the production if you lower taxes. People work all the same. And second reason, so something I've talked about before, if poor children have access to food, and adequate education. So that's a tremendous boost to national productivity. And generate more fiscal yeah. So that's something that that's increasingly being recognized, is that letting a big share of your population not being able to develop properly and to gain their skills is extremely bad for productivity. So in the end, it's not, yeah, having good policies for poor children in terms of healthcare, education, and food is so yeah, most advanced economies realize this, and they finance meals at schools, or yeah, they have free education up to oftentimes 18 years old, or even later. So some countries have even free university education. So that this is the basic ideas, but you shouldn't exaggerate it. Some goods like justice and police services are viewed by most people as being better provided by the government than by the private sector. So we've discussed this at the very beginning of this chapter. So if you, it's very normal to have a sort of mafia at the top of the food chain of armed forces. So there's one sole provider of or law and order. Otherwise, it's a bit chaotic. Yeah, so you could have if no centralized police. People can make justice for themselves. And so they are usually not an impartial judge for their own situation, and this leads to an endless cycle of vendettas. So, you killed my brother, I'm going to kill your brother. And then the wife of this brother says, oh, you killed my husband, I'm going to kill your husband. And then you just go on forever. So this, in many places in the world, or not many, but in some places in the world, it's still going, this is still going on. You have to essentially get justice for yourselves, but it never ends. So at some point you say, okay, you got wrong. Well, we're not going to just do the same eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, where the government is going to step in and administer justice. Individual freedom generally not. This makes a whole lot of sense. All right. Paternalism, what is it? Intervention in the free choices of individuals to protect them against what is presumed to be their own ignorance or folly. So this is very rather controversial. So it includes things like mandatory seat belts, what else? What could I think? Oh yeah, so preventing the public from investing in the stock investing at will in the stock market, because they could lose all their money very quickly. Forcing people to save for retirement. And then let me add a very controversial thing right now. So vaccines. So problem with vaccines is it's for themselves, but also externality. Yes, so let me put this here. So if it's vaccine to protect yourself, so what we're saying is you're too dumb for getting the vaccine for yourself, so we're going to force you to get the vaccine, but there's this extra effect that you don't only protect yourself, but by not being sick you don't infect other people, so there's the externality part of it. And now it's, so why is this controversial? Well, because at the latest numbers, I think so. Now they want to have kids vaccinated under 12, and I think 50% of parents want to get their kid vaccinated, and 50% do not. So it's extremely controversial. Mandatory seat belts. So it used to be that. So why should I be forced to protect myself? Maybe I want to just take a risk. Maybe I feel invulnerable. And no, it turns out that you're stupid if you don't wear your seat belts, or we're going to force you to wear it. So that's again paternalism. Or yeah, investing in the stock market. It's because people we see that stock markets are too complicated for them. Forcing people to save for retirement. Maybe you want to just live fast and die young and spend all your money, but no, we know that once you retire, you're going to feel sorry if you didn't put some money aside. So we're going to make it very difficult for you to not save your money. So there's something to that, to the effect of, if you're old and without money, of course, you're not going to just be left to die out there. The state is going to help you at least minimally to survive. So we don't want to pay everybody for that. Otherwise, we would have to have more taxes. Social responsibility. So these are, this is more of a political science question. So, oh, by the way, so is there a question about paternalism before I move on? Oh, all right. No. Yeah, so the general principle we see is, even if markets are efficient, it doesn't mean that their outcome is compatible with most people's conception of a good society. But they're good at producing goods and services, that's for sure. And then this is what we just discussed, that there's this trade-off between efficiency and justice, social justice. So when markets do fail, so governments should intervene somehow to bring a more desirable outcome. But so when should they intervene? They should intervene when it's beneficial to do so. So they should have a cost-benefit analysis, and this is exactly like cost-benefit. Like for a private firm. So you want to have positive profits, net losses. So for the government is the same thing, or should be the same thing. A program should be positive overall. Problem is, of course, it's difficult to quantify everything. So a good example of that is, for instance, should I used, if I have $1 million, what should I do with it? Should I build a library, or should I make roads safer so that maybe one person a year is not going to die? So what's the best use of this money? Saving one person's life or providing a library? Very difficult to assess this, but you still need to do it. So that's sometimes why economists don't have a good press, because they look like cold calculating people. Well, somebody's got to do it. At some point, the decision has to be made, whether to save people's life, to generate more knowledge, or to increase education. So you have to decide where to put your money or how much to spend. And these decisions should be made as rationally as possible. So we need something like the valuation of how is a statistical life worth? Is it is preventing one death worth $1,000, $1 million, $1 billion? Well, maybe $1 billion is a bit much, but $1,000 is a bit low. So generally, economists say that in Canada, one statistical life looks like it's around, I think, $10 million, something like that. So generally, they say that if you spend like 100 million or $1 billion to save one life, it's not worth it. But if you spend only 1 million or 500,000, then it's worth it. So it looks cold, and so if it's my life, then it's infinite. Yeah, but if it's a statistical life in the country, you have to, at some point, make a decision on it. So that's cost-benefit analysis. So in the private sector, it's easy because it's just money in, money out. It's very easy to see at the end of the month, did I make a profit or a loss? For public programs, it's more complicated, but still we must do it. All right. So 2 minutes. Yeah, so maybe we continue for a while, but 1 or 2 slides are going to be left. That doesn't matter. Yeah, so the tools of provision. So public provision, redistribution, and regulation. One thing I want to say about this is that like public provision is like free for education or healthcare. Or indirect ways of redistributing. So we say redistribution in kind. So this redistribution program would be like more like subsidies or tax breaks for poor people. But many of the redistribution that the government end up doing is through the provision of free education and free healthcare, because these cost extremely, these cost a lot of money. So they're not financed equally. So people who pay more taxes finance more education and healthcare, but then who receives it? Well, it's everybody receives the same if you opt in the public program. Then cost of intervention, then there is a direct cost and indirect cost. So direct cost is the impact of the measure. And indirect cost is cost of implementation. And so we tend to think that direct costs are the highest, of course. If I build a school, then building a school costs a lot of money. But indirect costs shouldn't be overseen. So what are indirect costs is just all the costs that goes into changing the laws, negotiation, and so all the functioning of the government, and especially if the government doesn't work well, then there is all the problem of oh, there's somebody who asked. Yeah. So Yasmin Kuti, is it this one? So anyways, we're out of time. So yeah, it's so we're going to stop here unless there's a question again.
Listen.
Hmm.
How much slides are there left?
How much what?
Slides are there left?
Slides?
Yes.
4. Yeah, so but it's not going to take a lot of time, so we can start here next time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no questions, I'm going to end the stream.
Could
Oh.
we meet after the class?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I have just a quick question. When can we expect to get our grades for the second midterm?
I don't know. So it's graded automatically, but yeah, they do check a bunch of stuff before, as I think. So, but yeah, this time I'm going to be quick into making sure that the grades appear. So last time I I thought they appear, but yeah, Moodle is just the less time I spend on Moodle, the best my life is. So, but still, I have to understand it as well I can.
All right, thank you.
All right. Okay. So thank you, everyone, and I see you Thursday.